right. Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Brad Ward here, lead strategist for community philanthropy at the Council on Foundations. Delighted to have you with us. I don't want to waste any time because we have an amazing cast today with us to really dive into this notion of strategic use of IT for community foundations. And Chantal, I want to thank you for putting together this amazing team who's going to be joining us, and thank you for being along for the ride with us at the council and with me. You know, I was realizing just the other day we kicked this conversation off at the request of the field back a year ago now, over a year ago, back in March of 2019 in Tucson, Arizona. And what I probably wouldn't give to get back to Tucson right now, to be in the room with folks, but delighted to be here. Just excited to be able to create the space to have some experts on the line and talking about this critical conversation. And Chantal, you said this in our prep a few days ago, but it's so true. And I just want to reiterate it that it's these fine folks on the line, Rhonda, Shelley, Charles, Rhonda, and James, and you and others who have been critical to business continuity in the last couple of months and demonstrated the relevance and the functionality amid this pandemic and just more broadly, how this is going to shape our future success if we can really take to heart what you've put together in this presentation. So thank you to you and your team. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chantal.
Thank you, Brad, and thanks to your entire team. It's really energizing to be collaborating with the council on today's webinar, as it is something we've been speaking about for over a year now, and it's something that our folks here, TAG member organizations, community foundations throughout North America are dealing with right now. So hello, everyone. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm Chantal Forster, and I'm the Executive Director of TAG, which serves as the Technology Association of Grantmakers. So welcome to today's session, jointly planned with TAG and the Council, on what is really a pressing question for most foundations right now, whether you're a community foundation, a family foundation, a corporate or private foundation. And that question is, what role will technology play in your foundation's future? We've learned this very palpably as a result of the pandemic. And so the question is, will the role of tech, will it provide an advantage, a competitive advantage or a mission advantage? Or will that role become more of a liability as society demands, more digital skills, services, and capacity than you and your partners can provide? TAG recently published a roadmap. I'll post a link in the chat for you. But we recently published a roadmap for you to take advantage of technology for your future strategy. And so we won't be rehashing that today, but today what we're doing is providing an overview of that roadmap and then sharing real-world stories from peer foundations. So today you will hear from Charles, Shelley, and Rhonda, representing foundations in Vancouver, Cincinnati, and Kalamazoo, Michigan. We will also be stewarded today by James Law from Grantbook, who conducted countless hours of research with community foundations throughout North America to develop this model, this maturity model for the role of tech in your orgs, and how you can use this maturity model to move your organization along the curve to the highest level of advantage with the strategic use of technology. So with that, I am going to turn it over to James. Would you like to get us started, James?
Of course. Thank you so much, Chantal, and good afternoon or good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking some time today. We're really looking forward to exploring the topic that Chantal had mentioned about how foundations can invest in strategic IT to enable mission and organizational strategy. So today we'll fly over the reasons why these strategies, or this investment is important. Then we'll talk about some steps to get there. And as Chantal mentioned, we have some real life examples to discuss sort of their journeys to date. And then we'll actually cover some really concrete next steps of how you could pursue this as well. I think before we get really into it, we wanted to do a few introductions off the top. So Manuel, if you don't mind going back one, I'd like everyone just to have an opportunity to meet a few of our panelists. So I'm wondering if our panelists, those top three, you don't mind introducing yourself, your name, your position, your organization, and maybe one word you'd use to describe what your hopes are for the second half of 2020. Charles, do you mind starting?
Thanks very much, James. Yes, it's Charles Bonham. I'm the Director of IT for the Vancouver Foundation. I've been with our organization for about 6 years. And my hopes for the rest of the year is that science prevails and that we come out of this pandemic in a stronger way than ever.
Rhonda?
Hi, I'm Rhonda McGee, and I am the Information Systems Manager at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I have been with the organization for close to a year now, but my one word in terms of hope and inspiration is empower. And empower defined is to make someone stronger and make them more confident, especially in controlling their life and claiming their rights. And in tech, we have the ability to do that. Thank you.
And hello, everyone. I'm Shelley Espig, and I'm with the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. And I've been with the foundation for 7 years and 7.5 now. And I have evolved through different positions. And I am now the Director of Technology and have moved up. And that's through hard work and great leadership that has stewarded me. As for my my word for hope, I think it would be determined. I'm determined that my tech will help my people see this year through. I like what Charles said. Absolutely, science is going to play a big part in that. And Rhonda, I appreciate what you said as well. You know, the empowerment of our people, you know, our end users to do what they need to do. So, thanks.
Thanks so much, everyone. For the sake of time, I'm going to say let's keep going. My word is trust, but we should probably keep moving on with our presentation. So it's sort of impossible to talk about strategic investments in IT right now without talking about COVID. I mean, this sort of pandemic has really introduced a whole new level of challenges, but community foundations in particular have been really impressive in their ability and your ability to respond. You've mobilized quickly, connected community needs with donors and other resources in order to fill the gaps that have emerged during this time. But while some have needed sort of to react quite quickly and invest in technology now, you know, start your digital transformation because of COVID, some foundations have invested strategically in IT prior to COVID, and they've sort of been able to move more nimbly and respond quickly as well. And those are some of the stories you'll hear today. On the next slide, we want to sort of outline that while COVID is one example of how strategic investments in IT can pay off, there are a plethora of other reasons that community foundations need to use IT and tech strategically as well. And this really evolved from our research and talking to community foundations and peers. So the most common reason we hear is about how competitor financial services and investment firms have sort of leapfrog the sector in technology solutions. And so it's increased the competition. But there are other critical drivers as well, especially for those who may not feel that sense of competition. One big one is technical debt. So that's really just a fancy word for saying if you experience old technology holding your organization back from doing what you want to do, that's technical debt. And so if you don't invest in IT strategically, that builds up over time. And maybe for our CFOs out there, you know, the word debt is something typically one is a little bit afraid of. The other challenges that strategic IT can help resolve are those last 2 points on that slide there. It seems that every time your programs or development teams want to introduce something new, there's never a quick solution. It always feels like there's a really long runway that you have to wait for before you can pick a tool. And even when you're ready, when you look at the marketplace, there's so many solutions out there, it's hard to tell what is the right fit. So on the flip side, on the next slide, if you do invest in strategic IT, not only do you find some of these solutions, but you actually gain some pretty strong competitive and strategic advantages as well. So the first one is the ability of your organization to gain a competitive edge. So by using IT strategically, by bringing technology to the strategy table, you can actually invent and invest in some solutions that allow you to lean into the value of a community foundation. How great would it be to have technology help you connect the needs of your community with the people who have the resources that can help fill those gaps? The second thing is to reduce risk. So if you invest strategically in IT, you reduce that technical debt that we talked about, but you also increase your runway so that you're able to continually do what it is you want to do without having that operational sort of friction emerge as a result of good investments. And the last thing that strategic IT can really help us gain advantages in is leading in our values, particularly around the conversations of DEI right now. Investing strategically in technology can allow you to really lean into the differences within your stakeholder groups and ensure that you develop solutions for these groups so that they can gain equitable access to information or resources or relationships with your foundation and your community as well. So those are some really key reasons as why we see it's important to invest and those advantages that you can gain. So we want to think about then how can we get there? Well, in the roadmap that Chantal talked about and in our research and talking to peers within and outside the sector of community foundations, we've learned that building a strategic IT practice, it is a practice. It's something you have to start now, and it's never too late to start, but the benefits accumulate and compound over time. Also, maybe despite sometimes the confusion or the frustration, there actually is a way forward. Across all our research, we saw that community foundations sort of go through 4 main stages in a roadmap to really get a strategic IT lens in their organization. The first 2 steps focus on really sort of catching up, reducing that technical debt. So for example, in Essentials, it's really about replacing those old systems that are holding you back. And then in the enhancements phase, it's about tying those new tools together so they work well for you. In the later stages, it's really about investing more, but this is where we really start to see those competitive advantages and innovations emerge. So for example, in the elevation phase, we see foundations building custom donor portals or grant-making marketplaces to better connect donors and nonprofits. And in that transformation stage, this is where we've seen foundations maybe pick different sets of technology tools for different stakeholder groups in their community so everyone can access information and relate to their community equitably. So I'm going to sit on this slide for now. We're going to launch a poll in just a second to sort of ask where you think your foundation is, but maybe to ground this framework. Charles, Rhonda, and Shelley, do you mind sort of speaking to where you think your foundation is in this roadmap and why, briefly?
Yes, I'll start with, it's Charles here, and I would say we're in the elevation mode right now, and largely transformation is more aspirational for us, but we are moving into areas there too, I think.
Hello, this is Rhonda. And I would say, like Charles, we are in the elevation mode, but at the same time, considering the work that we're doing cross-functionally to try to understand what our business model is and how to sort of digitize that or digitalize that, we're also in the transformation stage. These are 2 elements that can be, you know, actually completed together or in conjunction of one another. So that's where we're currently at.
Well, Shelley here, and I'm with the other 3. We are absolutely in the elevation and tipping towards transformation. The efforts that my foundation has put in to invest in strategy has absolutely just propelled us forward. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm excited to see what the transformation phase looks like for us.
Perfect. Thank you to our panelists. So on the next slide, we do have a bit of a poll. So based on maybe what you've seen on that slide and what our panelists have said, we invite you to rate your own organization and where you think you are along the roadmap to strategic IT. And Chantal did put in the chat, we also encourage you, if you have any questions based on what we said so far, to add them in the chat, and we may engage along the way. Sweet. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. So this is a very interesting distribution. Glad that most people have been able to move forward from Essentials. So 13%, I think I understand in my heart where you're at and where you're feeling. Enhancements maybe at this time as a result from COVID is a reasonable stage for us to be at. Many may have had to move on to new systems because of what happened. So we're really focused on tying those things together. And those last 2 stages, I would sort of appreciate as we move forward, if you have any questions about how to continue through those phases, or even throw in the chat how you've experienced these last 2 phases. I think that would be really good food for thought for the rest of us as well. Great, thank you. So, knowing that, I'm glad not everyone's at transformation, or else we wouldn't have anything to talk about today. But on the next slide, what we want to refer back to a little bit is that roadmap. So the roadmap that Chantal mentioned, that guide, will give you some concrete steps about how to move to that next phase. Sorry, Manuela, on the great but how slide. And by moving through those phases, maybe while we get that brought up, because I can't see it right now, there are 3 main levers that we suggest that you're able to pull on essentially to move along that roadmap. Thank you. So to move forward in a strategic IT lens, you want to be able to focus on how you talk about technology, process, and teams in your organization. And as you change how you talk and operate within these buckets, you'll move along that roadmap towards strategic IT. So the first is technology, something that maybe we're more all familiar with, which is which tools you should be picking, what type of tools, how to pick those tools, and how to make sure they work well together. But then when we look at that process bucket, we're talking a little bit more about how your teams work internally. So how do you solve problems and how do you engage your stakeholders? For example, do development and maybe grants teams come up with a bunch of requirements and then hand it off to ops and IT? Or do you all sit together and really co-diagnose and co-solve some of those issues that arise? And the last lever that you can pull is really around the IT team structure. And that really revolves around where does the IT team sit in governance, how much access do they have to leadership, and how much resources do they have to actually help your organization operationalize those goals and missions that you create together. So before we move to our panelists to talk about some real life examples, again, these 3 levers are referenced in the roadmap and the guide that we produced together, and you'll see some indicators on how you can move forward with those towards strategic IT. So for our first panelist, I'd like to invite Charles to start speaking about the Vancouver Foundation's experience.
Great, thank you, James. Thanks, Manuela, for advancing the slide here. Yeah, I'd just like to talk about a few themes that have worked well for us here at Vancouver Foundation to advance our IT and / business projects. And the first one is really about building momentum from successful projects. And I preface that by saying about 6 years ago, or more than 6 years ago, before my time here, we had a failed project here, and that really has damaged the credibility of our IT department here. And it took us a good year or 2 to really claw our way back into good standing. And in a way, it's actually made us stronger than ever. So. But just to say, it is possible to turn things around as well for those of you that are really starting from ground zero. And thank you. And yes, also on the second point here about business continuity, as James mentioned as well, that's been a key item for us as we've transitioned to working from home and remote work stance. And certainly the work we did on our disaster recovery planning about 3 years ago and the infrastructure investments we made allowed us to seamlessly transition and continue business operations and really be that much more responsive in our COVID planning and activities as well. In keeping with that, keeping a flexible and agile mindset has been very important in terms of making sure that the shifts that we're all seeing in terms of our original plans for 2020 have all likely been given quite a jolt. And so I think in terms of the planning and your ability to leverage the technology investments you've made to help in that is very important too. And then in terms of priorities, we're all very used to hearing about how it's so important for IT to be in alignment with the business strategy and in order to help drive those projects. And certainly we're seeing in Vancouver Foundation the intertwining of those aspects of the pandemic in terms of revealing the inequalities in society. We're already shifting a lot of our business activities to support that, those shifts and understanding how we can be more responsive and help. And so again, just making sure that alignment's there to also make sure that the priorities are well understood so that IT can settle in behind it to help move things forward is very important. And lastly, I'd say that the value of engaging with trusted IT vendor partnerships is super important. For us, that's been very effective in advancing a lot of our projects forward and making for really substantial business value as well. So these are our partners, since we're largely outsourced here, that really understand our business and understand how to leverage the technology available out there to translate them into really powerful business solutions. And I just mentioned this quote here from Robert Kennedy over 50 years ago now. We certainly do live in interesting times, and I think it's really important, as Rhonda was saying, to realize that we do have a way where IT can certainly demonstrate its value right now to the organization, but in philanthropy as well. And Manuel, if you could just advance to the next slide. So on this one, I won't go into too much detail here, but this is really a snapshot of some of our major key projects over the years and over the last 5 or 6 years. And we've got a number of items here, but really it is that tension I think we often see between the non-sexier kind of infrastructure investments versus the powerful kind of application changes we can make to either better or make more efficient the lives of our internal colleagues, but also making a difference and speaking to that competitive advantage side of things, making sure that our publicly facing applications are keeping up with the Joneses out there as well. So I've also made a point of highlighting in red there the ransomware intrusions that our organization suffered, which we were able to recover from quickly. But this is just for 2 reasons, I guess. One is to just mention the fact that we did triumph over adversity there, and we're able to kind of shine a light on the fact that we needed to make investments in the items that follow to the right in perimeter security and cybersecurity training, and also to emphasize that cybersecurity is not only a risk mitigation factor, but also can be used for competitive advantage as well, simply because we are well positioned to utilize a lot of great technologies that offer very strong security standards, but also the privacy that maybe some of our competitors aren't necessarily as focused on. Lastly, I would just say that we also have the continuum there of the timeline, just in the way that IT moves very quickly in terms of the maturity of cloud-based systems out there. We've certainly followed that in some of the activities in our grants management system, and the embracing of Salesforce and that ecosystem as well has allowed us to move much more effectively there, not necessarily having to take on the burden of in-house infrastructure. And so, yeah, as we see on the bottom there, I just thought that there's having the overlay of Grantbook's white paper here really does follow the same kind of shifts we've kind of seen here with the fundamental or foundational kind of investments in the restructuring or essentials area there. And then as we move to the right, certainly the enhancements and reputational risk management kind of activities as well that we focused on, replatforming servers and securing our donor portals and things like that, helped us move along much more effectively to the elevation and transformational kind of components here. And I guess lastly, I just say it's kind of hard to see, but in the bottom there, I just do have the concept of continuous improvement. And I think it's really important to realize, as hopefully we all do, that this isn't just static with IT. Things are moving all the time, whether it's in regards to external threats and emerging threats from the cybersecurity landscape, but also the opportunities, as I was saying, with referencing the Kennedy quote off the top there, ways to learn from mistakes and constantly revisiting our systems to make sure they're keeping up with the needs of the business and the expectations of our clientele externally. I think that's about all I have. On to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, so much for that. What a great sort of lesson from 2014 onwards into 2020. So as you can see, I'm sure it started before then, but that's like a 6-year snapshot of that practice that's been building, and that importance and that focus on iteration and learning from mistakes and coming back to the table again and again, I think is very key to those latter stages of the roadmap. I just want to flag that please continue to ask your questions in chat. We are doing sort of an open Q&A session after our next 2 panelists speak. So Chantal's helping us again curate questions, and we'll allocate those. But having as many as we can for after the next 2 panelists will be really helpful for that discussion. All right, Rhonda is next from the Kalamazoo Foundation. And Rhonda, wondering if you could help orientate our folks a little bit on the line, maybe talk quickly about the size of the organization, maybe the number of staff, so they can calibrate to your experience.
Sure. Well, the Kalamazoo Community Foundation is located in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we have a staff roughly of about now, it's growing, so 37 to 38 employees. In terms of assets, we have close to 900 million in assets. We've been around for 95 years, a little over 95 years, coming up here soon. And so all of our practices and sort of how we play in the landscape of philanthropy it's well founded in processes from 10 years ago to 5 years ago to now. So when I joined the organization, there was sort of this call or question put out to me with regards to digital. Maybe obtaining digital, how do you take digital back? And so, coming from where I come from in terms of my background of human-centered design, it was very clear to me that taking digital back would be an organization effort focused on not just the notion of process, people, and technology, but process, people, technology, information, and more importantly, business, how to partner with the business. So with that being said, we needed to quickly find a way to work cross-functionally in a non-sort of traditional IT way. And that plays in the realm of design thinking and user experience. And I don't know how familiar our audience is with user experience and design thinking, but essentially at the core is looking at the pain points of internal and external stakeholders associated with a particular business or organization, and then trying to work together as a group, team, organization to solve a particular problem or challenge with various different approaches and methodologies. And 9 times out of 10, those approaches and methodologies are they're not steeped in the technical, but they are they're involved, or they revolve around the practices that we do on a day-to-day basis in terms of interacting with our external and internal stakeholders, the work that we do. And so with that being said, coming into the organization, they had a lot of sort of disparate systems, systems that weren't really being used to full capacity. Digital had kind of overtaken them, and they wanted to, again, take it back. And the best way to do that after, digging in and having conversations is to transform those projects into products. And the products are basically the systems that we work and that we play in, and that we actually allow our external partners or stakeholders to leverage to do business every day. So it was very clear to me that design thinking would play a tremendous role in what we do in terms of looking at the products and services associated with the organization. And so just to give you a little insight into design thinking and human-centered design and our approach, it's basically taking, non-technical individuals and looking at very specific problems associated with not just the teams that they're on, but the products that they're using, and how external stakeholders essentially are struggling, or the friction that is sort of apparent in the interactions that they have with our systems, whether it's a CRM, whether it's a portal, whether it's a website, and really understanding and asking those questions to uncover the why, so to speak. So for the foundation, DEI was something that they really wanted to dig into and understand, and that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And from a human-centered design standpoint, yes, we can look at demographics, we can look at different groups that we interact with and that we serve, but it became actually a diversity, empathy, and inclusion path that we were taking, and that is putting ourselves into the shoes of others, and really digging into their stories and really asking, about the challenges that they're having and why they're having it. And 9 times out of 10, because we're so relationship heavy, yes, we could do surveys, but a lot of times it's that conversation that lent itself to observing and watching people, and also observing and watching people interact with our systems internally first, and then moving outward with that process. It's a very messy, sort of chaotic trip, and we have to get comfortable with failing, but in failure, we understand and we learn. So we are still in the process of finding our way through human-centered design, user experience, and design thinking, but at the end of the day, we're coming up with solutions that are workable prototypes that we can, give to our internal and external partners to use and give us feedback on, and then, work with our vendors to come up with a better solution, or work with, consultants or developers to help us develop a product that truly reflects the business model that we have. Yes, we're a community foundation. Yes, we have unrestricted and restricted funds, and we have DAFs. But at the end of the day, we have also very specific service models that we have that may be unique and only specific to our organization. So to just, again, have that out-of-the-box experience with products, we wanted to find out how we could develop it, transform it, and truly turn it into a digital product for easy and accessible use of all stakeholders, and understanding the individual as opposed to just a group. So design, empathy, and inclusion. So that's the path that we're on, and it's iterative. It'll keep going. It's nonstop, and but it requires partnership, and a lot of times the root cause in terms of a barrier for expanding in digital is that lack of partnership. But again, with human-centered design and design thinking, we're able to overcome that barrier. I think that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I love that summary. And when we think about those roadmap levers, like that IT team being a partner to the business, sort of being involved throughout, and that process lever of incorporating, design thinking. So not only are you getting to the why of maybe users, donors, nonprofits want certain things, but it actually allows you to more easily work directly with vendors to realize those changes. Chantal, I think you had a comment about design thinking you wanted to add.
I wanted to share that this shift from a project to a product mindset, where, as Rhonda was saying, that benefits or includes diversity, empathy, and inclusion, right? That shift from project to product is something we're seeing in some of the largest foundations in the world, actually. And so when we also see pioneers like the Kalamazoo Community Foundation under Rhonda's leadership in the IT function move to really embrace this product mindset that provides ownership. It requires ownership and accountability for your customers, right? Your community members, your donors. Someone is held accountable for their experience of your services, of your organization. It really changes the game. And I just want to encourage you to know that even while some of the largest foundations in the world are embracing this mindset, it's also happening in community foundations like the one Rhonda works for, and so can you make this mind shift in your organization. So I just wanted to note that it's an invaluable frame to do your work that can apply both at an organization of any size.
Thank you so much, Chantal. Indeed, it is sort of a trend that is emerging, and everyone's starting to see the benefits of this way of thinking. I really love the addition of empathy as well. And so encouraging that sort of try to shift your mindset is really important. Next up, we have Shelley. Shelley, do you mind taking it away, and also maybe give us a bit of context about the foundation as well?
Certainly. Yes, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you to everyone who's pulled all this together, Grant Book, TAG, and the council. I appreciate all that. I love speaking about technology. I'm an organic grown geek, I guess you would say. So I love it. So as far as our foundation, we have about 750 million in net assets, and I have 45 employees, and I am one woman in IT, and like to say that. I like to call it, I'm the IT chick. And, but I also have a managed service provider. So as Charles and both Rhonda and Charles alluded to, there are some outside resources I have access to. There is no way that I alone could manage this without my managed service provider and without great vendors and partners and who understand our business. And that's critical. And one of the things that, this cross-functional, as it shows here on the slide, the cross-functional teams, that has been key. So for us, under new leadership about 5 years ago, things started to really evolve here at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. And we went from, seriously, we went from being tied to our desk with a large desktop that had to sit on a roll to come out from underneath your desk, to everybody having laptops and being able to be mobile and work in a way that they needed to work and to do their work. And so that was one of the first things that was just, and people resisted it at first. They're like, I don't need a laptop. No, I don't need that. And it's so funny because now everybody's like, oh, don't touch my laptop. Not only do I need this laptop, I need a new laptop. And I'm like, okay, well, just hang on to that. And then one of the other key things is under the new leadership is we created what we call that TPT, which is funny because the levers that James alludes to, the technology, the process, and the team, we actually created a team called TPT. We took a poll and they decided to name themselves that. So it's the technology and process team, and it consists of people from every area of our organization. And we meet, we were meeting once a month and looking at different projects that were on the table, different needs, so that technology wasn't functioning in a vacuum. And for a long time here at the foundation, there was this kind of an idea that tech was over there and they were the enemy, and the rest of the users were over here. And so it was interesting to see how we were going to change that mindset. So one of the things that really helped change that mindset is it worked two ways. Not only was leadership engaged and willing to have technology be part of the strategy overall, but there was this groundswell where middle managers were listening to the folks who were doing the work and hearing what their needs were. And so there was this kind of this coming together of the minds on what we needed. And that was just so fabulous. So it's not just one section. It's not like just leadership saying, we're going to do this. And it's not just the people saying, we need this. But it was the melding of those two that has, I think, created such a nice, just a nice way of working with technology. A couple of the other things that are noted here, the investments, I was looking at Charles's timeline. I'm thinking, gosh, we did a lot of that in 3 years. In 3 years' time, we went from this very antiquated way of thinking and functioning, and we just catapulted ourselves in this new direction. And thank goodness we did, because as we did our disaster recovery plan and our business continuity plans, and we had all that really, we went from a binder that was, I'm not kidding you, I have it at my house because I want to keep it forever. It's this big on how we were going to function should something happen, to really simple outlines. And when COVID hit, we actually were able to pivot within 1 week to have everybody, we flipped the switch and we said, okay, on Friday, don't come back to work on Monday, everybody works from home. And there were just slight bumps. I'm not going to say it was just so smooth, that would be a lie, but all the little bumps just allowed us to learn. And the folks who were experiencing those bumps, they trusted me and they trusted our managed service provider that we had their best interest at heart, and that we were going to solve the problem, and that they were going to be able to continue to do their jobs. And one of the jobs they did during COVID was create our COVID fund, which allowed us to give over $7.5 million to the community. And that was, through GCF dollars, our local United Way, and our donor dollars. And that all happened remotely. Teams meetings, the ability to share documents. I keep saying I'm so excited about my budget this year. I'm going to save so much money on my paper and my copier. That's one of the bonuses of working from home. I'm already this year entering into my road shows as I'm getting ready to come up with the next 3-year strategy. And we call them road shows. And so this is where I actually go and I meet with departments, or I meet with maybe even cross-departmental folks. And I say, tell me what your pain points are. Tell me what we can do to make your work life better. And then they give me the feedback. They say all sorts of things, because for me to come up with what I think they need, that's just ridiculous, and that's quite presumptuous. So I think getting them in a room and telling me, what do you need? What's going to make your life better has been really a key component to, again, just sending us on this fast track towards that transformational organization. So I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, just let Chantal know.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I wanted to pick, you said many wonderful things there, but there's a few points I just really wanted to call out and reiterate for our audience. We talked about cross-functional teams, but Shelley, your reference to leadership and also middle management, if that does exist within your organizations, because I know some of you are smaller, some of you are bigger, but having those additional layers sort of buy into this whole process is super critical. And for the leadership maybe in the audience, I think your interest and your expression of interest and support is oftentimes that one of many, but a key critical factor to really seeing this progress along the roadmap accelerate. I also think, Shelley, your point around sort of doing that roadshow, listening tour, if you will. I know at Grantbook, sometimes when we meet folks in sort of non-IT roles, they say that we give them digital therapy sessions when we ask them what's wrong. But I really think, Shelley, you're echoing that. I think having IT sort of be a partner to that org, be cross-functional, allows us to form those bonds and listen to really what is going on in an organization. So with that sort of maybe wrapping up the panelists, I think Chantal, you're gonna lead us through a round of Ask Me Anything or questions for the group today.
We do. I've been monitoring some questions that are coming in and clustering them. And I think Shelley and Rhonda, I'm going to ask one first of you. Chime in if you'd like, or both comment. But we've had several comments come in around how do you, if you are a small organization, let's say you're 100 million in assets and you don't actually have a devoted IT team, or you have one person owning that function and they're solo. How do you move forward in this roadmap without that team? How do you outsource? How do you work with trusted consultants that understand the need to evolve the practice, the role of technology within your organizations? Feel free to jump in if you have something to say, and I'd love to hear from both of you, actually.
I'll actually go first. So when I joined the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, I can actually tell you during my interview, the first thing that was brought to my attention was, you will not have a team. You came from an organization with a team, but you do not have a team. And I said, I beg to differ. Everyone in the organization is a part of my team. And that is essentially what the technology design, development, and deployment is about. It's about reaching across the aisle to individuals in different departments, and first of all, identifying what their pain points are so that they can assist you in identifying what the actual technical need is, because technology is just, it's a tool that we use, right, to assist us in our work. We don't want it to guide our work, but we want to be the ones in our processes guiding the technology and how our external users and stakeholders leverage that. So, the first thing that I did was I for myself, I held a traditional lunch and learn, but basically it was how to partner with information systems and technology. And, the first thing that I mentioned was, maybe in the 80s, computers were the thing that got you to the thing, but technology, information systems, we're the thing that gets you to the thing. It's not the actual hardware. It's not the actual, it's the people who actually work and build relationships internally and externally and know the business, from the CEO right on down to, the receptionist. Everyone has a hand in it and everyone has something to contribute. And so, I would encourage you to, have those conversations, whether it's, one-on-one with, a colleague who is not in IT, but just talk from, a business point of view. We know the business, we know what we do, we know the type of relationships that we're building. And, sometimes, you'll uncover challenges and problems like with regards to Kalamazoo Community Foundation, people were a little unclear on what diversity, equity, and inclusion was. So that was a great way to sort of open that up and to sort of take a look at historically how we leverage not just people, but systems with regards to diversity, equity, inclusion, but then talk about how we can reimagine that, especially in a time where current events are sort of taking control of that sort of concept and that ideology and framework. How do we reimagine that, and what does that look like for our specific community? So it's stepping outside of the world of tech and not necessarily talking about tech, but just talking about the challenges and problems that your foundation or organization is facing internally first, and then start looking outside externally. So that's my suggestion and recommendation with regards to that.
Okay, and I've forgotten the question already, Chantal.
Shelley, we have a follow-up one related. If you have a managed service provider or a consultant, which you mentioned that you do, Shelley, how do they help you strategically? Are they suggesting a series of actions and processes you can take to mature your organization? If you could help us understand that role between your staff, your team, and your MSP or vendor team.
So yes, I absolutely can. So our managed service provider, it would be easy. The old one we had was really just desktop. You know, Johnny lost his ribbon and they would come in and help him find his ribbon. We certainly do have that with these folks, but they go a step beyond, and that's why I really do adore them. They're constantly thinking, they're constantly saying, you know, if you did this now, it's going to not only save you money, which always rings bells, but it's going to make you more secure. And security right now, that is their framework, I think, more so than anything, is how to keep me secure so that I can sleep at night, because that's the thing that keeps me up. So working with them is the one thing that gives me some relief. As far as my other vendors, I have got 2 other vendors that I just work so very well with that support me in Salesforce, and the idea of automation and the idea of our how we can do better. You know, you can do that, but it'll save you probably 2 hours a week, you know, for the rest of your life if you do X, Y, and Z and spend a little bit of the money now. So it's the idea that they come to us, or better yet, they'll come and say, both the managed service provider and my other 2 vendors, you know, if you do that, that's just going to cause problems here and we're going to have to correct it later. You decide. And then they give me enough information to make an informed decision for the foundation. And again, when I say that's not Shelley doing that. That's me taking that back to a group of people and saying, okay, y'all, here's what we can do. What do you think is going to work best for us in our environment? And I love the fact that we have a culture that allows that and allows that dialogue and it allows us to be vulnerable with each other. So
I was just going to jump in, Chantal, just to mention that I think to Shelley's point, I think comparing the 2 managed service providers, if you've got the former, you've not got the right partner, then today you need to have that type of device coming at you to keep you ahead of the curve and keeping you agile and nimble. And I guess I'd also do a little plug for TAG here, for the $100 million kind of organization out there. Tap into the wisdom of the crowd. There's a lot of great resources that one can tap into with TAG, and certainly just the openness of the foundation space to share ideas, what's worked, what's not, and that is very, very valuable. And lastly, I'd say cloud is your friend out there, and setting up those structures for what you deem to be appropriate for yourself. Going back to Rhonda's design-centered thinking, and that is vital in terms of choosing the right component. But also leaning on your board for expertise outside, and of course the value of an external review from someone outside of the organization that understands the community foundation space to advise accordingly.
Charles, while we have you, so there are a lot of questions coming in. I won't be able to get to them all, but I'm going to do 2 more. Charles, a quick one for you. Compliments on your roadmap from Jose. He's curious, how often do you revisit that roadmap that you shared throughout the year? Is it like a once-a-year process, or how often are you revisiting that?
Right, actually so the initial roadmap was prepared prior to my arrival at Vancouver Foundation, and I executed on that. And we made changes based on input from our IT steering committee and where we thought priority and risk was initially. And then in terms of what we've tried to do internally here is to find equity and making sure that we're delivering to certain departments fairly, so that it's not Christmas for one department all the time, so to speak. So there's that aspect of it. But in terms of the overall planning, we tend not to project out even more than 2 years, just recognizing that the landscape is shifting so quickly, not only in technology, but also in the needs of the community, communities we serve. And so, as I say, in terms of aligning with our business strategy here, our CEO is not necessarily tying us to a 5-year roadmap and that. So yeah, I think part of it is being flexible, but most of what we did was really about looking at the risk management side of things and the foundational activities in the emerging kind of quadrant there, and then being able to kind of have the luxury of picking and choosing and prioritizing thereafter.
So here's the fire round. Thank you, Charles. Here's the fire round. I know, James, you have a couple more slides you want to share, but a quick question for each of you. This came in from Casey. Where in your organization does IT report? And James, you can maybe after everyone goes, you can wrap us up, since I know you're going to talk about this is in your publication. Where does IT report and how that reflects a certain maturity level in the organization? So where does IT support in your organization, and is there a board ramification as well? Like, does it report up into the board differently than it reports up into the organization? If you could just briefly comment on the reporting structure and ownership structure for technology. Shelley, I'm looking at you. Do you want to go first?
Yes, so I report to the CFO, who reports directly to the CEO, and we have a technology committee as part of the board. It's not a real committee of the board. I hate to say that, but they're more of an advisor, but board members serve on that committee. So.
Thank you. Rhonda, would you like to go next? Oh, I think you're muted, Rhonda. Let's go to Charles and we'll come back. Oh, Rhonda, are you with us now?
Yes, sorry about
great.
that. So I actually report to the CFO as well. And then the CFO reports up to the CEO, and the CEO reports to the board. This is, in terms of what we're doing at the foundation, brand new. In terms of having a human-centered design sort of aspect, or even just IT outside of operational or tactic or kind of that help desk landscape. So there is no tech advisory board, but we're working on that. And I think the more that you can demonstrate or show, or that I can demonstrate or show to the CFO, as well as just to my colleagues, that we're doing very mission critical work, then that piques the interest of the board. It makes its way back up to the board. They understand that, basically innovation starts with people, and that these complex problems are being solved collaboratively. So that's where the interest then starts to get piqued at the board level. So we're in the process.
And then Charles.
Right. So I'm part of the senior leadership team here at our foundation. I report to our VP of Finance and VP of Finance and IT, and that's a change since our new VP just started in January. Prior to that, I was very, very fortunate to have a VP of Finance that very much supported our IT investments, and that goes right up to our CEO as well. And what we have now, as opposed to my former VP, which was very risk management focused, we have the same with our new VP, but she's also looking at the opportunities and driving efficiencies within the organization. But all this to say that I do have a great conduit right through to the top, and I also report to the Finance and Audit Committee, a subcommittee of the board, and I feel like they also have my back as well and are very supportive too.
Thank you. And then James, I know there are maybe one or two more things you want to share to wrap us up, but you may also have a comment on the reporting structure question in reference to your maturity model.
I think the only thing I would sort of continue to add is that in the guide on the next slide there, Manuela, we do go through in that roadmap the types of structures, so those reporting structures that you want to see in your organization as you move along that roadmap. Typically, the further you are along that roadmap, the more the IT team reports directly to leadership, however you sort of define that in your organization, and the more sort of nodes they have in other teams that they're consistently talking to and feeding information to and from. So we've heard some really great stories today. I really like this emerging sort of idea that we heard today that IT teams in foundations are people superheroes. They do work outside of technology, they work with vendors, they work with your team, and as long as they're supported, they can really lean into those people-focused superpowers and continue to make your community foundation or foundation a sort of a human, people-centered organization. So concretely though, to get started, we encourage you to go to the URL on that website there. I'm sure there'll be a follow-up email, and download the strategic roadmap for IT and community foundations to read about how you can pull those different levers to move along the roadmap. We also included a roadmap template, and we encourage a cross-functional team in your organization to sit down, read the guide together, and maybe fill out that roadmap template together and start to diagnose challenges, generate ideas, and form that maybe 1 to 2 to 3 year roadmap on how your organization can continue to use IT and technology strategically. On the last slide there, we do have the information of the panelists today, and also for Brad, Chantal, and myself. Feel free to reach out. Our panelists gave us permission. If you have any further questions for them specifically, or for Chantal and myself, I guess, maybe more generally about the publication or the results. Chantal, Brad, hand it back to you maybe for some wrap-up words before we log off for the day.
Yeah, Brad, if you want to close us out when you're ready, I just want to first thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And huge thanks to Charles, James, Rhonda, and Shelley for digging in and pulling back opening up the hood on your organizations, sharing candidly where you are in your journey. If there's anything we've learned this year through society's challenges, it's the value of reinvention. It's the value of tenacity in evolving your organizations. And I hope everyone here leaves as inspired as I do on this reflection point. We're on this reflection point in the journey toward reimagining. And I just appreciate you pausing with us. There's a lot of hard work ahead. I look forward to doing it with you. So thank you again today. Brad, over to you for any final announcements.
Just a reminder for everyone who's listening in, hopefully my audio is on here. Is that coming through okay, Chantal? Okay, great. Good. Just a reminder, if you or someone on your team, is not already an active member in TAG, this is an important, very influential and engaged group that I encourage you to support. I encourage you to benefit from. The fine folks that you've heard from today, Shelley, Rhonda, Charles, all are true testaments to the value of that network, a value of that expertise and subject matter expertise that exists there. So thank you, Chantal, for all your leadership, and to all of you, Shelley, Rhonda, Charles, just for sharing and opening up. As Chantal said, James, I want to thank, we also had Sarah at Grant Book on the back end, Stacy at TAG, from our team, Danielle and Manuela, who all helped make this possible. We couldn't have done it without you. Lastly, just one more thank you for the framework, the language, and even the behaviors that have led to the great success that you all are having, and really helping us uplift the strategic notion of IT and what it means and what it can do to influence and evolve our organizations as we all approach to be better service delivery folks in this mission delivery that we do here at community foundations and across, because we had many folks from other nonprofits and other foundations with us. So I'll close out. Reminder, this is a recorded session. We'll share the recording, the PowerPoints, and the resources that Chantal flagged for you probably within the next week as we get all that uploaded. So with that, have a great rest of the day, great rest of the week, and thank you so much for being with us.